great. There we go. Didn't go full screen. There we go. Panic over. Right.
So,
here's the tale.
When you last left me, if you were watching the show last night, probably noticed pretty quickly, because I'm very obvious, that I was like struggling to stay alive during the end of the show last night. Full disclosure, I didn't have time to eat because I had to run first and I had to make sure I got home in time. And I was like really crashing towards the end of the show. After the show, I didn't have real food. I had Magic Spoon, and then I went to bed because I had to be up at 7. So, fun fact, did my usual Snapchat, and then I went to bed, and then I woke up the next morning, and I was going to get up at 5:45. The alarm went off at 5:45. I heard said alarm. I turned off said alarm, and I kind of like shuffled in bed a little bit. And the next thing you know, I woke up, and it was 6:30. So I'd gone back to bed because my body's telling me, oh, and you need to get some more sleep. And my response is, yeah, you're probably right. But my work is never done. So what did I do? I didn't get my walk ski in. So I'll be doing that after the show tonight. And I had my water enhancer, and that helped me get through the day. And Gina gave me like a little bit of Dr. Pepper, like when I went on break. So kind of kicked me awake a little bit. I drank a bunch of water at work, and that was pretty much what happened. And wasn't late for work. That was great. 3 days straight. Now tomorrow I finally get to work at Universal Studios again. Thank God. Yeah, that's a really random way to start off the show. But yeah, that's the world we live in. So welcome everyone to Popcast Movie Club episode 4. God, it's crazy to think that I've got 2 of these things now. It's weird. That's some weird, wild stuff right there. Anyway, because that makes perfect sense to use that terminology, given the fact that we're playing up Johnny Carson and Rich Little's version of Johnny Carson, which, as AJ so eloquently put last night, looks absolutely nothing like Johnny Carson, but does sound exactly like Johnny Carson.
The voice and the mannerisms are what count.
Here's the best part, AJ. I did something today while I was waiting for the show to start that I didn't do before on any of the other movies because there's no reason to, or would have been a way to do it. Letterman's press conference in January when he announced he was going to CBS. I watched it.
As it happened?
It was on YouTube.
Oh.
It was archived. It was
happened?
like raw footage. Yes. I went back to 1993.
I mean, you would have been what, 12? You could have seen that live.
You're not wrong. I could have, but obviously I was at school.
Oh yeah.
Because that would have happened early in the morning. So yeah, I definitely would not have been able to see that back when it happened. Yeah, I could have seen it for sure, but not as it happened because obviously I was in school. Kind of like when the OJ verdict came down, I was in school. So I know this is a weird thing, kind of like what happened 9/11. I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
The only college class that I actually have to this day, and the reason that I saw Citizen Kane, because I was in school. I feel like this...
That explains the snow globe then, I guess.
Stream Funeral Grey. High def if you're able to. Anyway, which is funny because lately I've been listening to... because I've been listening to the SpongeBob musical soundtrack in my office as I get ready to work every morning, and I have been since literally the best day ever. And needless to say, I am very excited, and it gets me like hyped and everything, and it makes me like happy, and it wakes me up in the morning. But when I'm getting money in the morning to get ready to start my day, and there's no one around, I just pop on Funeral Grey and listen to it about 3 times, and it hypes me up and gets me ready. So yeah, I'm ready, and we're gonna do this tonight to talk about
a terrible SpongeBob impression.
Well, I'm sick, and I don't have a SpongeBob impersonation, so that's just me. I just don't have one. So Basically, I will state right now that this show is dedicated to a movie that was something that I have loved ever since I first knew of its existence. So Bill Carter wrote a book called The Late Shift, and HBO decided to wanted to make this into an HBO movie. You know, back when those were a thing, and when it wasn't something that was running for like Best Picture or anything like that. When HBO movies actually were not like HBO Max or HBO to the Max or anything like that. No, that wasn't a thing. It might have been HBO to the Max back in the day because it was in the 80s. But anyway,
unless it was the UK, in which all bets are off.
Well, you just probably called it hobo or something. Anyway, I will state right now that this is a movie that I connected with immediately. There's two things when it comes to news that I latched on, and AJ knows both of these, both of which have movies. One of which is a movie he absolutely despises. This is a movie he actually likes. So I have been enthralled with news exactly 2 times in my life. Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan, and David Letterman and Jay Leno. I could care less about anything else. I never watched anything. I didn't pay attention to Joey Buttafuoco. I didn't pay attention, because it makes sense, because obviously we're talking about The Late Shift. And I didn't really pay attention to, like, anything, like, all the stuff that happened, like, you're supposed to pay attention to, because, you know, you're supposed to, like, learn from the news. I didn't care, never have. So it was kind of like, these are things I actually cared about. So I latched onto them, and I became, like, a champion of one of the causes. Now, I chose the heel when it came to Tanya Harding, but I chose who I believe the babyface was in Dave Letterman, even though history will tell you that neither of the two really came off well, but they also didn't come off terrible either, because everyone knows at the end of the day, Helen Kushnick is the Antichrist. So,
Yeah,
or was.
all the villains of the movie are
the fact that Wikipedia.
Oh no!
The fact that
AJ fell asleep in the middle of the video.
The one thing I will say with Kushnick, whether it's, I can't remember if it's the same in the credits, but
She sued Bill Carter.
No, I meant on Wikipedia, Bates is listed first.
Oh yeah, totally.
He's
the first.
Ahead of either Letterman or Leno, despite the fact it's about them.
No, seriously, watch the actual credit roll, and I just did a few minutes ago, and yes, Bates is the first one credited, and
right.
justifiably so. She is one of, honestly, I don't care. This movie is probably under so many people's radars, they may or may not have ever even heard of its existence, or it may just be a little blip on movie history for you. Something probably most people don't even know exists or stopped thinking about years ago. I'll shoot with you. At the end of the day, Kathy Bates as Helen Kushnick is one of the best heel performances in her time that she's on screen that I have ever seen. And when you're invested in it, like I was, it's even more powerful.
I was saying it's funny how you put so much behind this villainous Kathy Bates performance, knowing that this is the person that also played Annie Wilkes.
I know, but I didn't grow up on Misery like everybody else did. I grew up on Helen Kushnick.
What we're getting to at the end of the day is Kathy Bates can really, really play a villain very well.
Oh God, yes. Queen, heel, and undisputed, 100%. But it's just, it's so great because, I mean, there's lots of things we're going to talk about tonight. By the way, this is your cold open. Welcome to Popcast Movie Club, The Late Shift. So, yes, it's crazy to me that you wonderful people in chat have selected 2 of my movies so far, and I thought I'd have to wait a little bit. I appreciate that greatly, because everybody knows I have a short attention span. But needless to say, I am usually doing surveys during half the time, but at the end of the day, I can focus on something that I actually really want to talk about, and as you all know, I become extremely passionate about things, i.e. the Green Book. I have no idea how that ever happened or why that happened. It just did. Love that movie. Put it over for like hours. Stuff we've talked about, like the Iceman on camera, things like that. anytime we've discussed Tarantino movies, like Watchmen, things like that. It's just lots of other examples. But yeah, when I'm very passionate about something, I go all in on it, and justifiably so. I want to start with, before we go further, welcome Ashley.
I need some caption up here about I'm president of CBS or something. After seeing so many captions show up in that thing to explain who everybody is, it's like it's The Big Short.
I mean, honestly, if this movie, seriously, right now, if this movie would have been made now, this would have been an Aaron Sorkin movie, for sure.
It wasn't really the names that bothered me, because the names are at least informative. It was the constant timestamps that are.
Oh yeah, as well.
As you know, that's how the book goes, though, so it's very true to the book. And I'm never, ever again going to be one of those guys that says, not that it's a bad thing, it's just it's not me, that says the book was better than this. Well, the funny thing about this one was I read this book numerous times, so much so that I wish I could find the copy that's under my bed right now. It is in tattered, like, destruction right now. AJ knows what I'm talking about. That thing got torn into shreds. And the movie and the book are very similar, to the point that they really did take word for word dialogue specifically. We're talking about the CBS press conference that bookends the movie, and it's word for word. I know, I literally just watched the press conference. It's taken directly from all source material. The actual press conference itself in 1993, the Bill Carter book, all the same, almost word for word. Like, Dave says something different in the when he's talking about Paul Schaefer coming along. He says he curses a little bit, but I mean, and John Michael Higgins doesn't. But that's one of the only differences. 9 times out of 10, the dialogue's word for word. Like the Amy Fisher dialogue, it's identical. The put a smile on Jack Benny's face line, that's identical. The are you going to kick Jay Leno's ass? That's a shoot. And Dave's like, I'm going to kick your ass. And then, of course, he did it as a joke. And then he was like, oh, we're not really in the shape to kick anybody's ass right now because we're just getting started. The Colin Powell line that everybody pops for, that's actually in the line too. So, I mean, it's great because all of these things that are in this movie are from not only just the book, which you would expect, but they're from the actual press conference. So Bill Carter took word for word dialogue from exactly what happened. And when the movie was made, that's exactly what happened. And that's why Betty Thomas got a DGA for this.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to think.
Does the book...
Deservingly so, but that's crazy to think.
Does the book explain Leno's background anymore?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
It's sort of, I guess because they're known as TV icons over where you are, like, I guess that's sort of more commonplace. But obviously over here, you know, I know of a Tonight Show existing with Johnny Carson, and that Letterman came in sort of the 80s, sort of, you know, very much like the idea being that when Johnny decides to go, we'll sort of pass the baton to you.
Yep, literally. Literally.
But like, all I really know of Leno is he's got a big chin and he's very fond of cars. I don't know where he sort of... I mean, they do mention in the thing how he sort of was doing strip clubs and sort of like low rent gigs, but like...
Well, it's weird because it feels like, and AJ, I don't know if you concur with this or not, but at the end of the day, it feels like they put a lot more on Dave than Jay, which deservingly so. But in the book, there's a lot more on both of them because they both grew up doing the comedy circuit. They both were working the clubs together, and that's how they became friends. Dave and Jay never hated each other. They were never in competition. Jay was always the baby face. Dave was always the baby face. And then Helen Kushnick came in, and basically it's the line that she uses on Robert Morton. It's like, you know, the real reason between me and you, it's because he had me and you didn't. So if Helen Kushnick was not in the picture and would have been on Dave's side, then Dave would have got the Tonight Show.
Yeah, because Dave's whole thing was that he didn't have an agent.
Yeah, Dave didn't want an agent. He thought it was a skeevy business. He wanted to do stuff on his own. And it's justifiably so, because the only person he really confided in was Robert Morton. He only talked to Morty. And then when Peter Sally came over from Carson's group, he basically confided in him that whenever Johnny left, then Peter was going to come on with Dave. And he became Dave's basic guardian angel for the entire movie and throughout, and for realism too.
What I really like about this film is it shouldn't have been made, because in respect that, like, the story of, like, you had the sort of at the end the what happened next sort of thing, but
Sure.
so much has happened since then. Like, Ovitz was in an illegal shit of his own after getting ousted from Disney because of shenanigans, and then he had his Vanity Fair issues and whatever. Bob
Right.
Iger goes from ABC to actually being head of Disney, replacing Eisner, or was there somebody in between? I can't remember. Was it somebody else? I'm trying to.
There was a figurehead before.
I don't think it was Eisner. It was somebody between Eisner and him.
Well, Eisner basically he was great for the company, but they didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
And now we're stuck with Bob Chapek trying to ruin Disney's legacy, and yeah, he knows what he can do with his hat. So.
And then, of course, like, the Late Shift Mark II, I guess, with the whole debacle with Conan.
Yep.
And Leno.
And that book is awesome too. And it was brought up, and I read this in Wiki, and it's interesting that this was brought up, that they were talking about it. So they were talking about if there was going to be a movie based on The War for Late Night, which is the Conan O'Brien story, which it's really good too. Exactly the same way that the story's told that Bill Carter tells Leno and Letterman. The stuff with Jay versus Conan is fantastic stuff. You'll look at Conan in a completely different light. You'll hate Jay Leno's guts by the time this is over, because at the end of the day, Jay basically, he didn't become Helen to that extreme, but he pushed the envelope to be the one that is clearly the bad guy.
I did want your opinion on something, and I hope I can get this out, because if I look annoyed right now, it's because I'm having a bad connection day, apparently.
Oh, no.
So...
That explains why Owen was laughing his ass off when at one point it looked like you weren't falling asleep for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, it looked like you went all Rihanna and everything on us.
I'm pretty sure...
Oh, God. I cursed it. Thanks, Danhausen.
So, oh my God. Come on. Come on. Okay, are we here?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're live!
What is your... So, you feeling about Leno the way you do, especially in this particular context of this movie, how do you feel about Leno's portrayal as a nice guy that's just the victim of everybody around him for a while?
See, Jay has plausible deniability for the beginning of the movie. He's the all-around nice guy. He's playing the baby face in every way possible. He's like Sheldon Moops in Death to Smoochie.
Very much so.
That is 100% great comparison right there. And at the end of the day, he's basically just trying to do everything right. But it's what Helen says goes. You know, as someone that knows a little bit via social media and also films about how Stockholm Syndrome works, at the end of the day, you do have loyalty to somebody, whether it's right or wrong, and Dave... take a shot. So Jay latched on to Helen because of the promises that were made on her father take a shot, on her husband's deathbed, and the promises that were made to make sure to always take care of her and her kid. And it would never, and Jay was loyal and he did not want to break that, but Helen pushed so far that she had to get him to do so or he was going to lose his mind. Jay, at the end, you can also see that he starts off like Midwestern boy that comes out. He's all like he's fresh off the tractor, things like that, just the normal stuff you would talk about from movies. But by the middle of the movie, when he's literally water gating the Boca Raton just so he could get more dirt to find out if he's going to lose his job or not, and his only response to calling Warren Littlefield is, "I'm Italian, I can get information." makes me realize that he learned a thing or two from Helen about how to do things the wrong way. And he starts off in a very good light. And by the time that the movie is over, the only people that are seeing him still in that good light overall are his fan base. But you could say the same thing about Dave, because Dave has a lot of people that don't like him. And he comes off as a cynical asshole the entire time because he's so brooding and self-loathing. And that's what the movie shows really well. And that's where John Michael Higgins shines here. The thing about it is that he's showing a side of Letterman that the public didn't know about. And that's what Bill Carter's portrayal in the book, showing more of the reality of what Dave Letterman truly was, that most people would have no idea about. Behind closed doors, you didn't realize Dave was like throwing pencils up in the air and like complaining about missing a joke. No, he seemed fine. Like the Sandra Bernhard thing when she's like asking how you doing and everything like that. I'm really happy to be on the show. And Dave just writes, "I hate myself," underlined 3 times. He's like, "What, do you want my number of my therapist?" So it's like you're seeing him like disconnecting from everything. And all he wants to do is get Carson's chair. And when it becomes impossible to get, he's got to find a new dream. And that's difficult to do sometimes.
Because when you talk about the Letterman that the public didn't know, that was a Letterman that everybody like around him and worked for him knew.
Right. Oh yeah, it's focused on in the book too.
Whereas Leno is where he's got like a couple of facades, because there's the public persona and then this, but everybody around him also thinks that he's the nice guy that's just surrounded by people. But then we get that moment where Helen actually calls him out and says, you know what it is that I do, you just basically refuse to acknowledge it so that you can keep being the nice guy. She has that great line where she says, you want me to keep serving you the steaks, but you don't want to know how I slaughter the cow.
Slaughter the cow, exactly. And it's funny because Seinfeld's not in the movie. He's in the movie for a second when he's walking out on, because that's him. That's clearly supposed to be Jerry walking out as the last person during this show where Carson ends up retiring. And because that's Jerry, clear as day. Jerry was friends with both of them. And Jerry's like information about both of them would have been very beneficial for this movie. And I feel like it would have been great because he's in the book like all through. And it's like Jay was always looked upon as he's really talented, but he's too nice. And what happens when you're too nice? You get stepped all over. And that's exactly what Helen did. Helen latched on, got a cash cow, and realized, oh yeah, he'll do anything I want him to do. So let's exploit him to try to get the Tonight Show. So I can mold it into what I want it to be. And Jay is my scapegoat.
Because it's so surreal watching the early scenes of this movie where Leno and Letterman are friendly with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really weird in retrospect.
You ever wanted a movie club conversation where I actually like care and participate? And this is probably gonna be it.
I do have something I want to bring up real quick while we're on this.
Sure.
When we were going into this, and we were talking about like after it was picked, we kind of talked about it a little bit, and
yeah,
I had said that whenever I see Daniel Roebuck now, I just kind of see Leno.
Totally.
Because the reason I say that is because you can see the resemblance. Do you think the makeup was a little overkill?
A little bit, but I think it's supposed to be.
Because I think he resembles Leno enough by like regularly, but in the movie he looks like he's wearing a weird mask.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like I think he could have just looked like himself and would have been able to pull it off just fine.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to chat as well. There's probably not going to be as much chat tonight, but everyone that's chiming in, I appreciate you.
People are asking about a poll. Like, do I get to have a contender go up against Ripley? I don't think that's the way we're doing it. It's going to be. I've eventually got to earn my way to not be last out of the three of us.
I mean, if you want, AJ, do you want to do a poll tonight? Or do you want to just do Ripley next week?
Well, I'm a little biased towards Ripley, so I don't think I'm the person. I'm not really the person to ask.
That is fair.
I mean, Bry brought it up in chat. Also, Bry has clarified it was Eisner still there before Iger. Because I think Iger's been there for, a decade now.
Yeah.
I lose track of that stuff because I just remember seeing Iger and all the Star Wars kerfuffle with Kathleen Kennedy and all that stuff.
So, the movie was nominated for 7 Daytime Emmy Awards, including Supporting Actor for Treat Williams and Supporting Actress for Kathy Bates. Writing, makeup, film itself. We talked about Betty Thomas winning PGA.
Thankfully, one of those was not one of the only aspects I don't like about this movie, which is that really awful 90s TV movie score.
Hey now! I was watching LA Law and I was enjoying it. No, AJ, you'll appreciate this. Honestly, I feel like it makes sense because I know it kind of took from it a bit. Like when Dave goes to CBS and the music dun 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 dun. It's Larry Sanders.
Yeah.
100% Larry Sanders.
Yeah, I remember when Siskel and Ebert reviewed this, Siskel started gushing about the Larry Sanders Show and saying that he felt the Larry Sanders Show in this movie.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And
Siskel loved this movie and Ebert didn't, interestingly enough.
Which, like I talked about a minute ago when I was watching the actual press conference itself, Siskel and Ebert were there at the actual press conference.
Yeah, because that was when Ebert was bashing it, Siskel's defense was, are you just thinking about the fact that we know these people personally, which is something you have to distance yourself from?
That's fair. So yeah, Spencer Reed chimes in and says, hey guys, love the movie, found some interesting facts. Ovid's office scenes were filmed in Ivan Reitman's office. Nice.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and worth noting the Ivan Reitman Betty Thomas connection of the very next year they do Private Parts together, which kind of feels in the same vein.
It also feels like it's something that we're going to get into eventually on this channel because it's something that's never been talked about and we need to. Dave and Jay didn't like the film. Dave called it the single biggest waste of film since my wedding photos. I remember this. Lots of heat on this movie originally.
If I remember correctly, he only saw clips, didn't he? He didn't see the whole thing or anything.
He didn't watch the whole thing, no. He refused to. Spencer says, I like Letterman, but I think Craig Ferguson still is the most creative person to ever do late night.
Yeah, he's... Because the great thing that Ferguson could do was usually they do either one thing or the other better between their own material and then the interviews.
Right.
And Ferguson really, really excelled at both a lot. But there was just I think because I don't think Letterman's bits were that great, but he was an amazing interviewer to me.
His bits hit very well. Like Conan, for example. Conan always would hit consistently.
Yeah, Conan and Ferguson are kind of on the same level.
I mean, you got that slick SNL style from both of them. So, and of course, writing for The Simpsons and everything too.
I mean, the fact that is it Netflix that currently's got Letterman's project thing?
I stay away from streaming information unless it's involved.
No, but what I've seen from Letterman's stuff with that, it is more sort of about the interview and getting the story rather than, the style that Letterman did on his show.
Right.
I think he realizes that you know, getting more detail than you probably get by being a trusted person is better than just, you know, hitting the mark for 8 minutes and then cutting to commercial.
Right. I mean, I definitely want to get into a lot of things about this movie too, but I need to get in the chat first. Jay Leno said that had the canceled primetime show in 2010 costing NBC a lot of money. Yeah, I remember that. It made me laugh when that canceled. Sorry, don't care. I really don't like Jay Leno. I'm sorry. And this movie is a very good reason why. Dan Roebuck is so good here. It's just like it makes me dislike the real guy more. That his fictitious portrayal has burned me so much.
So,
Because I mean, Leno's already got a cartoony voice.
Yeah.
And Roebuck's voice is like a whole other level of cartooning. And part of me wonders, like, if it's almost intentionally clowning him a little bit.
Possible. Brian says it's coincidence we're doing a discussion on a movie centering around a talk show when last week Ellen DeGeneres' show came to an end.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing.
They always like to end. I love the fact when you see things like this, when it's like it's on every week. You know, it doesn't have seasons like wrestling. Yet all these major people, when they leave their shows, it's always Memorial Day. Carson did it. Leno did it. Ellen's done it.
Fair.
That's weird.
I think Letterman was about the same as well with May time.
See, Ashley, that's the thing. It's funny that you bring up about Leno and asking, like, where does he come from? Like, for someone from the UK, thinking, like, who is this guy? I get the same correlation with a lot of our guests from across the pond that come across Race to New York starring Jimmy Fallon, and they wonder who Jimmy Fallon is.
Well, he's the guy that got the Conan treatment, except they actually stayed on with him for longer than a month or about a year.
But to this day, one of the best things about that experience right now, like the right or not, is the fact that there's a shadow box for the Tonight Show, and it's got Jack Parr, it's got Johnny Carson, it's got Steve Allen, and yes, it does have Conan O'Brien in there, which is awesome because they actually didn't gloss over the fact of Conan's brief run as the Tonight Show host that he got 1,000,000% screwed out of.
I'm trying to remember, did he get ousted because they sort of said that the viewership was softening because of him, and then brought Leno in, but trying to hide the fact that his show failed? Or
literally and figuratively, it was kind of like what the movie shows with Howard Stringer talking about Pat Sajak.
Right. Okay, yeah.
I know Ashley will be happy when the Late Late Show with James Corden comes to an end next year, says Brian.
Oh no, I'm conflicted. There was growing reports that the football presenter over here is going to be hanging it up, and that for some reason Corden, despite having no background in football/soccer at all, is supposedly going to be hosting because they're desperate to cling to viewers. That might make some people turn off. I mean, I won't, because I do want to watch the football, but it'll be that bit closer for me if it did happen.
Spencer says late night TV is awful today. Kim was fun sometimes. I hate Corden. Celebrate, and we'll celebrate his demise. Yes. Seth Meyers has his moments and can't stand Jimmy Fallon. So Brian brings up the actual legitimate title of the actual book, which of course is The Battle for the Night. Late Shift, Leno, Letterman, and then Letterman, Leno, and the network battle for the night. Of course, Helen tried to sue the movie, and then of course she dies, so that didn't work out too well. And many people wanted a sequel with the focus on all three. Yeah, I would have loved that. That would have been amazing. When Roebuck performed Leno, why does he sound like Scuttle from The Little Mermaid? Is that what Leno sounded like back then? Yes. Because it's funny, because one of the first things you see from Jay is the fact that the lady at the airport goes, "Hey, aren't you the Doritos guy?" I was like, AJ is trying to tell us something really important right now.
what I was, no, what I was thinking of was like how much of it was like people being cast because they look like the person rather than sound alike. Because obviously Leno, with Leno, it's more sound alike because the amount of makeup on him. But
Not necessarily. I think Dan Roebuck looks a lot like Jay Leno.
yeah, but more emphasized with like the actual prosthetics. It feels like, when we're getting to this point where we look at like, Chadwick Boseman didn't look like James Brown, but he oozed enough passion that you were willing to let it pass. I sort of get that with John for his portrayal of Letterman.
I want to talk about Higgins once you get into it.
And the fact as well with it's on. It seems to be somewhere. I can't remember whether it was IMDb or Wiki or both or neither. There was something saying that the guy Egg Begley Jr. Shout outs to Better Call Saul.
Rod Perth.
As Rob Perth, but then Rob Perth has a cameo, and they basically make a joke of it in the thing. So in that respect, was it because did they pick him because he looks like him and not sound like him?
Yeah, of course. And it's interesting you bring that up because there's so many great performances in this movie, and we could talk about them forever, and we're going to. But I'll say right now, I want to start with John Michael Higgins. So anybody in this movie that is attached to Christopher Guest, which there's a lot in this cast that are,
including his brother.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as well.
I'm not saying him, but
still better than being Kerry Russell in Dark Skies. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I was saying something when my internet just dropped out completely.
Oh, go ahead.
He was talking about how late night sucks now, and I was saying that he may have already said this. I don't know. While I was out, it's not so much that, because I like Colbert and Seth Meyers and stuff like that. But the problem with Colbert and Seth Meyers is that they just want to be the Daily Show instead of a late night show. So I think that's really the only issue. Like I said, I like them and what they do, but it doesn't feel like late night is the problem.
No, it really doesn't. And I mean, the little clips I've seen here and there, I mean, we talk about like Higgins is like, he is like, we always bring up, and I'll never not talk about Alfred Molina as the Spaniard in Maverick. Okay. John Michael Higgins as David Letterman in The Late Shift is a performance that he will always hang his hat on, no matter what he does. Yeah, it's that guy from Pitch Perfect. No, it's not. And
it's
dude,
that racist
it's that
guy from Licorice Pizza.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no. Forever and a day, he's David Letterman, and he always will be. And that's how great John Michael Higgins is here. I mean, God, he's a game show host now. Come on,
I completely forgot that where I know him most from is Mentok the Mind Taker from Harvey Birdman.
Right? And
there's the Colbert connection.
Go ahead.
There's a couple of things I wanted to single out about Higgins specifically. And I know some people can say it's very SNL-esque, or it's, just an impression and not so much a performance, but there's still something about the way he captures Letterman's cadence.
Oh, yeah.
With all the, like, when he says, when he's, like, looking for words, feels really precise. And then there's one moment where he doesn't have to do anything at all. It's literally just him sitting on the couch, but it's, like, basically the emotional peak of the character, because we know another one of Letterman's whole things is that he's not an emotional dude or a sentimental dude.
Certainly.
So,
oh no.
Sentimental.
They're knowing that Letterman.
Sentimental, AJ. Sentimental.
Okay. We know that he's not an emotional dude or a sentimental dude.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So there's that scene where he's watching Carson sign off for the last time. And knowing that Letterman's not an emotional, sentimental dude, we can watch him just sit on the couch wordlessly, and we can see where there's two things going on here. Why this is heartbreaking for him, where he's watching the end of he's watching the show that he loves so much end, and seeing that era end, while simultaneously seeing his own job, like his own loss in this, go also.
I like how they're showing the dueling screens, having Dave watch it and getting all emotional, realizing that this is literally the end, or Jay and Maris watching the show and be like, "Hey, this is the end, but hey, I get to start next week, so there you go." I like how they balance the emotion in that scene too. I always have.
Because I was telling you something I had forgotten about. Because I don't even know the last time I saw this. I borrowed it from you when you like first got it on DVD.
Right.
Which was like well over a decade ago. But the fact that Letterman kind of gets phased out of this movie in the middle for a long time.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Like I get it. Like I almost feel like I'm sure obviously we're getting the constant timestamp, so we know that we're working with a specific timeline.
Certainly.
But I do wonder if they could have taken editing liberties. I know it probably would have pissed off, the rest of the content, but to kind of balance that out a little bit, where we kind of got all the characters sort of equally. But it does kind of feel like we'll have a lot of one or two characters, and then we'll break off and go into something else and leave those characters behind completely. And it's like it's especially the stretch where we're missing Letterman that I feel like kind of stands out in a way to where it's like you want to see more of how he's handling what all's going down.
Yeah, it becomes Jay's show for a bit, because obviously we have to feed into what Helen's doing and how she's like destructive.
I would watch a whole movie of just Helen making power plays.
Some of my favorite lines in this movie are things I cannot quote that are on Helen Kushnick's dialogue list.
It's the first time I know of the quote, and I had to double check that it wasn't actually where it originated from. It originated beforehand, but it's the first time in movies or television that I've actually seen "fuck you" and the horse you rode in on.
And that's when she knew she had Littlefield right then and there. And it's like, ha ha ha, I got you. It's like, yeah, you're trying to pull a fast one. You're trying to be all like Billy Badass, as my mom would say. But at the end of the day, it's like, I still hold the biggest balls in Hollywood.
Yeah, because even when he says fuck, Balaban's so good in this, by the way.
Balaban's amazing. We'll talk about him too. We talk about him. Yeah, we're definitely talking about Balaban.
Because it's not even just the fact that he's talking to Helen, it's just in general the character. Even when he says fuck you, he sounds so meek.
Helen just wanted to see what he'll say at this point. It's like, okay, fine, you wanna try to be tough, let's see what you're gonna say. And then Warren is like, he just like, I'm sorry, I'll do anything you want and everything.
Because I almost feel like they humanize Littlefield in a way in his earlier scenes, when he's like, there's a couple of scenes where he's the butt of a joke and you can like see the pain in his eyes. And they don't stick with this, because eventually he does kind of, I don't know if I want to say somebody you want to see walked all over, but he's in that territory.
I mean, I hate Leno, but I will say Roebuck's like breakout is when when he calls Warren the next morning after the Boca Raton meeting, and he just starts rattling off what was said, and Warren is like just basically like trying to run like a chicken with his head cut off to realize, oh god, who's leaking everything? Oh my god, there's security breach and everything. And then right after that, Mike Ovitz called, like, oh yeah, by the way, you've been offered the Tonight Show, but it comes with a cost.
Yeah, I love.
Uh-oh.
I've got to find out what he loves.
You're good.
What do you love, AJ?
I love the absolute terror in Littlefield when he says, "We have a serious security breach."
I'm sorry. I definitely want to go. I want to talk about Balaban here. Yeah. So I talked about the Chris Guest, and this is not the only time he plays Warren Littlefield, because in actuality he played Warren Littlefield on Seinfeld too,
Yeah.
which is really cool too, because obviously someone realized that he needs to play Warren Littlefield in life, and if you look at archival footage, he needs to play Warren Littlefield in life. John Guglia comes off as like the biggest toolbox in the world, and he has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. I mean, honestly, I guess it's a little bit like Bradley and Richard in Cabin in the Woods. Kind of that same vibe a little bit between the two of them.
I got that. You can get that vibe from them, and you can also get that vibe from Ed Begley Jr. and the other guy that he's with.
Talking about Howard Stringer.
Yes.
Pete Jurassic.
who I literally only know because he was president of Sony when the whole Sony hacking issue happened a decade and a bit ago. And he was the one that basically had to resign because of all the screw-ups on the technology side that Sony had.
I just looked at Peter Jurassic, and I'm trying to see if he's still with us, because I don't want to say this and him be dead, and then I'll feel really bad for what I'm about to say.
You just hold on. You just totally trashed Agolia, and he's been dead for like 8 years.
Well, Agolia's garbage. So I don't really care. And Rennie Santoni is amazing in this movie, just showing how much of a toolbox that Agolia really is. No, he's alive. We're good. Peter Jurassic could play Randy Newman in a biopic. Just look at the pictures, trust me. Yeah, Warren Littlefield has a little bit, like, it's because in the beginning he's a little bit more like, sure, like maybe Dave's not such a bad guy, and like Aguglia is like, no, he's a bad guy, and then by the time he says it so many times, like Warren believes it, and now they're the heels for the movie, and they stay the heels for the movie for the rest of the movie. You want to see them get their comeuppance. That didn't happen, obviously. So they had great success with NBC. Yeah, Ed Begley Jr. is amazing here. Peter Jurassic is as Howard Stringer, absolutely. So John Capellos as Morty. Yeah, Robert Morton is Dave's right-hand man and always has been. And he plays him off so well. Like, he plays the role to a T. Like, for all intents and purposes, he's basically Dave's Kevin Dunn. That's a good way to describe it. And I'm not talking, well, I mean, you could look at it both ways, really. All of the portrayals of the NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, random insert syndications, they're all just stellar. And it's funny because when I saw our good old friend Mr. Ernst come back in to another shot as well for like a split second. That was cool. Always good seeing the strongest man in the world show up in a movie. But yeah, I mean, like, everybody plays their roles to a T. It's like your Brandon Tartikoff, your Bob Wrights. I mean, your Michael Owen. We'll definitely get to Treat Williams in a few minutes. But yeah, it's like even a small role for like Paul Schaefer, that still works too. Dick Ebersol and Iger and Lee Gabler as well. But the thing about it is, at the end of the day, another thing that I want to talk about is Rich Little. He may not look like, but he embodies the spirit of Johnny Carson. And it's funny because I like it when Jay calls and Helen's like, okay, fine, call him right now and swear. And he's like, hey, Johnny. And he's like, Jay. Like, you clearly know he does. He Warburtoned him, basically. He's like, he clearly doesn't want to talk to Leno. But at the end of the movie, he has the heart-to-heart with Dave about if he should accept the NBC offer. And I love the way that it's done. And Rich Little was a big deal back at that point. I mean, he was a master impressionist, and that's the reason why he did a role like this. And he was the perfect person for this role.
Yeah, I know he's one of those people where you do like impressions of people, but then sometimes you think you're doing an impression of somebody, but you're actually doing an impression of somebody else doing an impression. He's one of those cases where a lot of people thinking they're doing impressions of other people are probably accidentally just doing Rich Little impressions.
Or Dana Carvey doing Ross Perot.
Yeah.
That's a good example that I remember used many times back in the day. So Helen gets out of control. Dave ends up getting Ovitz as his, and I love it because Ovitz is basically like he's giving him everything he wants.
I feel like we didn't go enough into Kathy Bates, honestly.
No, we're fine. I mean, I want to get to one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it's one of my favorite Balaban lines in the movie. You know what I'm talking about. So they have Ronald Reagan's like convention coverage, and they're running late. They're about to start a live show. Helen's losing her mind. So she makes a phone call, and she calls the head of NBC News and basically like tries to strong arm him and say, you know, I'm not going to use Tom Brokaw tonight. And he's like, I don't care if you use him any night. And it's like, you can't take me off the air. And of course, she's like, oh, I can do anything I want and everything like that. And she basically just cancels the show, which is the point where you know that she's lost it. Even more so. Like, it's over. She's done. And I love it because Warren walks in and he goes, what, you know, like, what the hell? And he sees nobody there. And he's like, she canceled an actual show? And of course, they had to get a repeat on. So if not, they were going to lose like their sponsorship money and everything like that. And it's like, okay, fine. Let's redefine what she can do now. And then the stuff with the country music booker, Ken Cragen, which plays himself in the movie, which I love that too. That's more in depth in the book than it is in the movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think my two.
Go ahead, AJ.
When I was saying that I would just watch a whole movie of Helen making power plays, I think my two favorite scenes in this entire movie are the Reagan scene and the Travis Tritt scene.
We don't do effing theme shows, you dumb hick and hick. I love that line.
And I honestly just love the visual of somebody storming into a room and screaming, "Where the fuck is Billy Crystal?"
Billy Crystal, yeah. I love that line.
Just like, Cragen's the only one when I looked and it was like, yeah, he's playing himself, isn't he? Because some of his delivery was like, yeah, that doesn't even sound like natural what he would have done when it happened like 4 years before.
People underestimate how hard it can be to play yourself because acting is a whole different ballgame than just living your life.
True. Look what happened in the Seinfeld Jerry pilot. Can't play yourself sometimes. You don't get cast because you're not enough you to be you. But yeah, I mean, and then you go into the Peter LaSalle stuff where Peter LaSalle is like becomes Dave's guardian angel, and he's going to be the one that's going to move heaven and earth to make sure Dave gets everything he wants and deserves. And he kind of warms up Bob Wright, who's already on Dave's side anyway, clearly. Because you can clearly tell there are people that are on Dave's side and are not. But the sad thing is, it would have probably ended differently if most of the people that were on Dave's side didn't leave NBC. Because that happened in most situations. Like when Brandon Tartikoff left to went to Paramount. And when he was trying to hype everything, he was like, I got a perfect match. Arsenio, followed by Letterman. And Dave's like, what?
Speaking of Tartikoff, shout out to John Getz, by the way.
Oh, God, yeah, John Getz. He's got that Eric Bischoff style, too. I like that. That's what Tartikoff comes off as, like an Eric Bischoff type. Wrestling fans are getting this and laughing. Most people that are watching this are like, "What are you talking about, Owen?" My response is, "It'll come. Don't worry." Anyway, I will say right now, it's just great because they're like, "Okay, we've got a problem," and Peter works with Bob Wright to try to fix the issue. It's like, okay, Dave's got 3 months that he needs to sign an extension. In turn, I'll let you openly solicit offers. So then we get the montage where he solicits all the offers, and like people are like pitching themselves left and right. So Dave isn't doing anything illegal, which is great. He could have, but this is not illegal at all because they're basically like selling themselves to him instead of the other way around. And that's when Dave realizes that he wants a network. And that's when you start getting the idea that CBS has been a player since day one. With obviously their history of broadcasting, their history of television in general, and it would be the place that Dave should end up. Even back in the beginning of the movie when they offered Jay the motorcycle to JL, crank it on up and ride over to CBS forever.
They
of course,
they were always in that play to try and capture that bit of the market.
Yeah, they wanted it because after Pat Sajak, they wanted to really take a bite at a late night.
Which you feel is sort of eventually what ABC did when they gave Jimmy Kimmel the job, like in 2003, and literally did exactly what they weren't going to do when they were offering the job to Letterman, in that they wouldn't budge Nightline. That was going to stay, and then when Kimmel came in, Nightline got budged.
True. But then Peter goes and he asked Dave. I mean, the Studs Letterman line, which is one of my favorite lines in the movie, and it's something I've quoted a billion times. And Dave is going through all of his options. And he realizes at the end he doesn't know what to do. So at the very end of the conversation, Peter's like, okay, if NBC were to offer you The Tonight Show, would you take it? Dave's like, of course, I want it. More than anything. I just wanted to hear you say it. Peter bombs out. Shortly thereafter, he gets that conversation with Bob Wright trying to pacify Dave. And then later in the movie, he gets offered The Tonight Show officially by Ovitz. But it comes with conditions that don't make the offer great beyond just the actual offer itself. Like, okay, Dave wants to be the host of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, Steve Allen's Tonight Show, Jack Parr's Tonight Show. He does not want to host the Jay Leno Show. And Peter gets him to realize that. Because Dave is tunnel vision to the point that he knows he wants it that bad that he's going to do about anything to get it, including taking a bad deal that may or may not ever happen. Because they give him an 18-month clause, and they give him that clause basically letting him the chance that he could improve in ratings and NBC can weasel their way out of the deal. And then where's Dave then? He's still stuck in 1230, and that's where he doesn't need to be anymore. But he has no idea what to do. So Peter has him call Carson, and Carson advises him, leave. And Dave does it. Because out of anybody other than Peter LaSalle, Dave Letterman shows the most loyalty to Johnny Carson. And that makes perfect sense. Like, Jay seems to think, oh yeah, it's like I'm indebted to Johnny and everything like that. But when Bob Wright asked him to say something about Johnny, he basically said, Helen basically, yeah, she said, don't say anything. So I have plausible deniability. And then he walks away. But yeah, it's clear that Dave's choice was going to be made by Carson. And if Carson said to take it, he would have taken it. I guarantee you he would have taken it. And who knows where we'd be right now.
I was just looking. There's a great scene we skipped over, actually. I think I probably should have brought it up when we were talking about Higgins.
Which one?
The start of this whole thing, when they tell him that Leno has it.
Oh, gentlemen, this is completely unacceptable. I want you to release me from my contract.
Because I love how we get 3 different Lettermans in the span of like 2 minutes.
Yep.
Because when he starts off, it's like he seems very accepting,
Yep.
and
Accepting.
Accepting.
threats.
Accepting.
Accepting.
He seems very accepting at first, and he's saying, like, oh, that's the way it is. It's a bummer, but that's the way it is. But then we see the anger come out, and it's, I'm going to get my lawyer involved. And then there's a third layer to this where this whole thing was kind of an act, and he's thinking he's making some sort of play, but not realizing that it's all kind of solidified already.
Yeah, Dave doesn't realize at that point that he thought that his power play worked. And he basically, of course, self-loathing Dave as always. He basically says, Morty, it's like, I sucked. He's like, no, Dave, you didn't suck and everything, but it didn't matter. And he's like, but you don't know. And he's like, no, I do know. He already has a deal. And then you see Dave just crumble. And I know that took a lot out of Letterman because I've read the book many times. The fact that he could not get the Tonight Show that he should have gotten is something that will eat him alive for the rest of life. And I know that because he's said it numerous times. But he's also realized that everything happens for a reason, and he ended up at CBS, did really well, and then, of course, Hugh Grant came on to talk about his little meetup with Divine Brown, done the party, and then it became Raw versus Nitro.
Yeah, because it's like, contrast that scene when he realizes he doesn't have the job to how he's acting after the first meeting with Ovitz, and it's like a completely different person. When he says he feels like he was just in a scene in The Godfather.
Yeah, he's like a meeting with The Godfather. It's like Ovitz is very intimidating.
What really strikes me about Treat Williams' performance. Treat Williams is probably one of the most underrated actors around. I love that he got an Emmy nomination for this.
Yes.
I love how he plays Ovitz in this way where it's like there's something kind of, and this is a compliment, there's something kind of alien about him. Like, yeah. Where it's like he's like he's such at a high level of power. It's like he lives on his own different planet. Just the way he interacts with people.
I mean, I love everything about this movie, and I always have. Like, I've watched it numerous times. I still can quote it. I haven't watched it in years. When I watched it, I was like, line dropped, and I was like, well, da 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 da, and I was like, yes, I still remember to this day. But yeah, it's really sat with me that the way this movie has gone, and everything has changed so much. Like, everybody in the end kind of got what they needed out of life. I mean, Jay went on to success. Dave went on to success. Helen Kushnick died. That's not really great success, but she tried to sue the producers of the movie and Bill Carter, and she did not really have the greatest of lives anyway. So, I mean, she didn't have the greatest luck when it comes to that. But she fulfilled her part of the story, just like everybody involved here did. There's bad guys, there's good guys, and there's tweeners in between. And this story has everything. Is it for everybody? Probably not. But it's entertaining. I feel like it always will be.
When you describe it as entertaining, you know what I really, 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 really like about this movie?
What's that?
There are a lot of movies that are telling a specific story,
Sure.
True story or not, and they'll have a lot of B plots, most of the time for no reason, almost like filler. Did you notice that this movie is about what it's about and nothing else? It is on, like, if I remember correctly, every scene is about what is happening. There's no like, because they could have, they could, if they wanted to pad it out, they could have like had us go more into like Leno and Letterman's personal lives.
They didn't.
We just don't get that at all. It's only their place in the story.
We get a
And-
few scenes. We had a scene or two with Maris, and she's not even name dropped, so
Yeah.
she's just there. Mavis. I don't know why I said Maris, but yeah. Oh no, AJ is staring at me, smiling.
Yeah.
There we go.
As soon as you freeze, I just wait it out.
There you go.
I seriously don't know what the fuck this shit is, because it was kind of shoddy last night. I don't know what the fuck is going on. The power went out like 3 hours ago. So, like a squirrel exploded down the street. I could hear it. But
Oh no, squirrel!
Squirrel,
I don't know what.
Fuck you and the line you got zapped on.
Because we've been doing because obviously I had connection problems back in like late last year, but I thought we were past this shit. I don't know what the fuck this shit is, and it's pissing me off.
That's fair. We got 2 weeks till we go to another show, so we should be fine.
Yeah. If there's one more thing I wanted to call out, it was if I'm gonna be here long enough. As far as Betty Thomas, with that DGA one and stuff like that, I did like how straightforward it was told, but it was also, like you were saying, it's almost something where you could see it being done in a Sorkin way now.
Totally.
There's that one moment where Leno realizes what's happening. He's been told what's going to happen at the airport, and we get that dolly zoom, like the Jaws shot of him, the vertigo shot. And it's stuff like that where I liked that she didn't feel the need to overutilize stuff like that, and the straightforwardness is actually the best way to go. But to use that in moments like that are these really big moments in the story without overdoing it, I thought is really well done.
There we go.
Did you catch all that?
I
Yeah.
did.
Thank Christ.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Actually, we can
interesting to sort of like see the view onto sort of how it went, but part of me feels like, one, it's not the full story, and two, as I say, I think enough has happened that like it needs to be a series, like what happened to sort of everybody, because it feels like some people, got the right end of the stick, like Letterman, to some extent Leno, and I guess Iger, depending on how you view his current reign at Disney. But then when you look into Ovitz's background, the fact that he's still married to his wife of like 50 years, but is also engaged to another woman, there's enough of a story there. I don't know how that's legal, but I guess it is, because it's technically not marriage. And then, of course, phase 2, with the issue with Conan and Leno and all that, and sort of how it expanded on. Thank God none of that happened when they actually hired Fallon, at least that we're aware of.
No, I didn't. Across the board, Jimmy was...
The only problem with that is that I kind of wish there was a Fallon problem so that we could have gotten another movie, because I would love to see the over-the-top TV movie caricature of Jimmy Fallon, because he's already an over-the-top caricature of it.
The NBC trilogy.
And I had one more thing I wanted to mention.
Sure. Oh boy.
It's not related to this movie, but it's related to Letterman. And they just put out what Ashley was telling us about recently, that Norm Macdonald special.
Yeah.
Have you heard what the last third of that special is?
Need to watch it.
The special is about 55 minutes, and then the remaining half an hour is a roundtable discussion.
Hang on. Roundtable discussion.
that special,
Rounds.
and all in the there's a roundtable discussion for the last half hour of that special where they just talk about Norm and that special, and all in the room together. It's Letterman, Conan.
I'm trying to get the
Handler, David Spade, Molly Shannon, and it's incredible.
Oh wow.
Jeez.
Yeah, I need to watch that soon. Spencer Reed says, "Yeah, the Jay Leno show was on. This would be something I would take a shot. Yeah, the Jay Leno show was on 10 every week in 2009, 2010. I remember this. This was before he took back the Tonight Show from Conan." Brian says, I'll say the late shift is good, but this would be something I wouldn't go back to. It would be a B rating movie. Spencer gives it a B as well.
I'm curious what it would be as like if it was a movie with a theatrical budget and could be done like a Sorkin movie or something like that. What we'd have. But being a TV movie, I would say this is above average.
100%. And for me personally, this is a movie I've loved ever since I first saw it. And it's something that I have become invested in. And when I'm invested in something, I'll fight for things. And I have for years. The movie's phenomenal. I absolutely love it. Is it something that is going to win awards? Yeah, it already did. But the morning show TV show would have worked better as a TV movie, says Spencer Reed.
Sometimes it does. I feel like when it's something that's sort of like staged, maybe it would, but then of course Newsroom's pretty good. Which ran for I think 3 seasons, was it?
I never finished it, but I saw the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And was into it.
But yeah, I see what you mean. Certainly, it's about morning show. I don't know, like it just seems a bit too sort of soap opera and like how can all this go wrong? Whereas at least Newsroom felt a little bit more general, probably because it was like focusing more on sort of like the real sort of topical stuff, and well, not topical stuff, but like stuff that was supposed to be happening within the stuff. That's why the series from over here, Drop the Dead Donkey, the comedy series, was really good, because it was practically written like a week or 2 before, so the stuff that was brought up in the news that they made fun of actually was topical at the time as well, and sort of still holds true to the day. And I think this does as well. It's in some cases it just feels, you know, I will rag on the soundtrack being a bit too much like a straight to DVD thing, but other than that, it does feel like, you know, it could have got a release over here, but I think just because of the subject matter, it was a bit too niche. And of course, whether anything like this would happen again anyway, because with the way that network television is sort of going and more people willing to just watch the little snippets of it on YouTube or Twitter,
Right.
It's in that case, it's a time capsule for when television, I guess, sort of meant something, because 4 million for a TV show feels small. Especially when during that time wrestling was getting more, and you'd have thought, but wrestling's more niche than a talk show, right? Then again, with an 11:30 start time, it's not really, it's like right on the verge of not being prime time, so.
Sure.
And it just kind of has to, it's struggling to get past that stigmatism of being a 90s TV movie, especially if it's a true, because the thing is coming from the book, which by all accounts seems to be a pretty reputable source. But the thing is that was that era where we had a lot of those unofficial biographies, you know. You can look those up. They're fucking embarrassing. But it could have been one of those. That's why I was saying, like, judging it as a TV movie, it's certainly much better than any other TV movie you'd see from that era. Particularly the true story ones.
I would think, on that note, that might be the end of the show. So, in closing, hopefully everyone checked out The Late Shift, and if you haven't yet, go watch it. It's definitely worth a view. And whether you're on Dave's side or Jay's side, you still have someone to root for in this movie, and that's basically that you're not Helen Kushnick or John Agoglia and Warren Littlefield. So, that being said, thanks everyone for joining us for episode 4 of Popcast Movie Club. Now, Brian mentioned us doing a poll for the actual challenger for AJ for the talented Mr. Ripley. Here's the reason why we're not going to. We don't. This show came out on a Tuesday, and a lot of our regulars are not here tonight. Shoot. So I don't feel that it's justifiable to do a poll when there's 2 people that have been chatting all night, because it's like we don't know who's going to win. Like, one picks one picks the other. What happens? So what's going to happen is 2 weeks from today, we're going to be dark, because obviously we're going to go back to our normal schedule. Sunday for the Popcast Q&A, which I'll come up with a fancy schmancy name for it eventually. Monday that week, I believe it's the 13th, we will be going live for the talented Mr. Ripley for Popcast Movie Club. And then 2 weeks after that is AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door. And Ashley, I don't know if you know about this, but at the end of the day, I found out that there is a possibility that AMC is going to be showing it in a theater. So that's where I will be.
I knew there was some sort of... Well, it was obviously in theatres with, I guess, a different distributor for Double or Nothing.
Yep, I watched it Sunday night.
And yeah, you know, I've already reserved it on Fight. I was planning ahead. Thank God I didn't reserve that Wrestling Entertainment Series or whatever it was called that was going to have its UK show this weekend. What a mess that is.
It says
yeah, we'll postponed. See. Get in your PayPal refunds now, everybody.
Right. Ashley can be found on Twitter at AshIsMyNameUK, and more Snack Stashes are coming very soon, actually.
Mm-hmm.
AJ, of course, cannot be found on social media, and just like Keith Richards cannot be killed by conventional weapons. He can be killed by social media, maybe. I don't know. He does. It's possible. You never know. Who knows? At this point, Penn and Teller get killed coming to Popcast Movie Club. Mark my words. That might
Can't wait for that.
It's coming. Don't worry. I'm super excited to talk about it. Especially gonna get to watch it again. Yeah. And you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like at Sir Owen Disney. And if you have any ideas for Sip and Snack or versus any other regular segments on the network, feel free to shoot me an email, SirOwenDisney@gmail.com. In the meantime, stream Funeral Grey. Have your best day ever. Get well soon, Matt Cardona. And that's all we got to say about that.